Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the In the Paint Show presented by Ballislife, episode 132. Once again, here with Chelsea Hopkins and And1, my co-hosts, and we're keeping it going. We're keeping it fresh, and we're going to do this a little bit on the wing of our pants, kind of like something we saw recently on air, and we wanted to talk about that. We're just going to go through things, and we have a lot to talk about. So how are you guys doing?
Good morning. I'm doing well, feeling good. What about you, Ani?
I'm doing good. My Ballislife gear came in. I'm excited. I'm rocking the shirt. You know,
got
the shorts on.
Yeah. What do you guys think about, the Ballislife gear? I know I've been pressing to get some out to you. Chelsea, did you get some women's items?
Yes, I did. I got a couple t-shirts, some socks, and a pair of shorts. Also a very nice, like white kind of leather pleather backpack. That was really cool. But I like it. I mean, the material seems pretty good. I only wore the shirt one time, and the socks I really like. But definitely good stuff. So I'm looking forward to, I need to do some workouts or something in it and, test it out. But I just walked around in the shirt the other day and it was nice.
Great. So yeah, we obviously are always pressing our gear. Make sure you guys check that out at shop.ballislife.com. We appreciate all the support there. Again, if you're listening to this In the Paint Show, 15% off your first order, PAINT15. That's PAINT15. We appreciate any feedback. And we appreciate you guys' support in general. Also wanted to mention that, we appreciate you guys logging onto our YouTube page, the Ballislife Network. Seems like more people are watching it there than just listening to their car, listening to their workout. So we really appreciate that. I know you guys are supporting us there as well. So we continue to try to grow that. But let's just jump right into it. We're going to probe the paint a bit on a bunch of topics, and then we're going to get into our main topic, which is basically the recent 30 for 30 documentary. There was And1 mixtape tour and all the things regarding the And1, and it's basically blowing up as a company and blowing up as a tour around the skip tape. Let's talk a little bit about the NBA. Wanted to talk to you guys about the finals. Obviously, the East came down at Game 7. The West was Warriors came down and won it pretty easily, but what did you guys think of the East Final Game 7?
You got it, Ani.
Yeah, it was interesting. I thought Boston was going to run away with it. I thought we were going to see another blowout, another playoff blowout, which has been the theme here. But Miami came back. Jimmy was fantastic. I know people talk about that final shot he took, but the reality is he was so tired. Like, he didn't want to go into overtime. He wanted to take that shot if he made it. Cool. If he missed it, he missed it. But he had no interest going into overtime, and I think the rest of Miami did not care to go into overtime either. They were dead. But Boston, they're deep. They're more healthy than Miami. You could tell Jimmy's really hurt. I mean, I'm also hearing that he's actually more hurt than that he's actually putting on. Kyle Lowry was banged up. Tyler Hero. I mean, it just comes with it with the playoffs. But Boston's just a better team. They're deeper and they're just more healthy. And I think that's just the thing when it comes to playoffs is we've seen the past couple of years is which team is more healthy coming down to the stretch. So
yeah, Ani, I totally agree. I'm very happy that Boston won because I just don't want to watch Miami anymore. Jimmy Butler has been incredible, but they don't have enough shooting and stuff. I need a team that can really challenge the Warriors, and I think Boston is that team. They have depth, they have length, they have rim protection, they have size, they have multiple people that can guard on the perimeter, which is what you need with, Poole and Steph and, those elite guards that they have over there. So I'm very happy that Boston didn't blow it because when Jimmy got that ball and started coming up the court, I'm like, oh, my God, this is insane if they make this comeback. But I'm happy that Boston is going to see the Warriors, and I think it's going to be a really good series and exciting, more exciting than what we've seen. As you said, there's just been so many blowouts. Like, everybody's just dying for, like, competitive games through and through. Like, hopefully it can go 7 games and be, a 1 or 2 possession game every one. That's what people are looking forward to.
Would you say that Boston got lucky playing Milwaukee without Middleton than playing Miami that's banged up? Again, like I said, that, it's the team that's the most healthy that wins. But let's say none of that transpires, is Boston in the finals this year?
I don't know. I think that's a good question, but I just feel like, injuries and people being banged up is a part of the sport and how it goes. Like, did the Warriors get lucky when my boy Bron had to play by himself because Kyrie and Kevin Love weren't there? Like, you can put an asterisk pretty much by every single, finals run, I guess, because there's always certain incidents, that occur. But even then, like, I think Milwaukee, still had a decent chance. Like, they were the ones who, he wasn't there from the beginning. So you guys should have already known he's not playing, like, figure out how to win the series anyway. So, I mean, I guess you can say it a little bit of luck, but that's just what you need these days to make a finals run and to be good. And, you have to have the luck on your side to stay healthy. And, sometimes your opponent is missing a couple players or whatever. So that's kind of just how it goes.
Yeah, I thought, as you mentioned, having a good series. I want to get you guys' predictions in a minute, but I just don't think the teams have the personnel to play a series as they are, shooting so much outside shots and relying on the three. Besides Golden State, you're going to get cold. Boston went cold a little while, they get blown out. Then Miami goes cold, they get blown out. Sometimes it's home, sometimes at the road. I just think there's a little too much copycat, too much trying to keep up with the Warriors in general. And like you said at Chelsea, I know you don't like really what Miami's trying to grind it out and trying to fabricate and manipulate wins, but like they're not going to win trying to outshoot Golden State.
No,
so
absolutely.
I don't think Boston is either. So I just think part of the reason we had the blowouts is too much teams relying too much on that three. And then, like you said, Miami series came down to it. The only thing I would say is, again, we don't want to. Jimmy Butler's a great player. He's a franchise player. It's like you have 16 seconds. So even if he makes it, you're still going to have to get a stop, and you may have to come and make another shot again. Mm-hmm. So I thought put the onus on the refs, drive. He seemed to have space. Obviously he's going to drive strong and maybe get a foul. And then you'd start, tie the game. Then you got to play defense again. I just thought there was too much time. If there was 4 seconds left, 3 seconds, and you want to try to win it. Like you said, you probably don't want to play overtime, but that's my take. And based on that, what do you guys think is going to happen in the finals?
Well, I could say what I want to happen, but I know what's going to happen. They're two different things. But I would love Boston to win in 7 games because I just can't see them, it winning earlier than that. But my heart is telling me it'll probably be like Warriors in 6, if I had to give a true, honest prediction. But I really like, the Celtics coach. I think that they have the personnel, like whether it transpires or not, like they have the depth and the length and the young legs and dynamic players. And that's what you need. Like, I think sometimes you're right, Ronnie, when you say these teams want to get into like shooting matches and stuff with Golden State. And that's not what it's about. Like, you just need to match Steph's energy, match Jordan Poole's energy. It doesn't have to be threes. Like Tatum and Jaylen Brown can get 32, and it doesn't have to be on 10 3-point attempts. So that's what I really think that needs to happen. They already have the defense there. Al Horford has been absolutely exceptional. Just, providing leadership and, just whatever that team needs, he's been there. So I do think that they have a great chance, but it's just the margin of error when you're going against Golden State is just slim, because even when you're up 10 or 20, like, it just doesn't matter, So that's why I just feel like the Warriors have the edge, especially with home court advantage.
No, I was I was talking to somebody and they made a really good point, and I agree with you, Chelsea. I think it's going to be Warriors in 6. The longer the Golden State Warriors in the playoffs, the better Clay and Steph are. They haven't been playing. They've been sitting out. They've been hurt. They're just really getting into a groove. And I think each series they got better. Obviously, like Memphis series was a little goofy, but they started making shots that, they started getting back in their groove as a whole. And in the conference finals, you just saw like the Golden State of old. And now they got some rest, a lot of rest while Boston and Miami just beat the hell out of each other. and now you got Steph and Clay in the finals, which this is very familiar territory. Draymond, like, I just felt like the longer Golden State got into the playoffs, more of a groove that they got. And I agree. Like, I just think it's going to be Golden State in 6, be 6 or 7. I mean, Boston's going to win 2 at least, but Golden State in 6. They're moving like a well-oiled machine. I know Boston has the personnel to defend them. I just don't know if Boston has enough offensive pieces to win 4 games against Golden State.
Yeah, but I will say one key that I didn't mention that I think about is, the Warriors are very, very turnover prone. And that's how I'm saying I think Jaylen Brown and Tatum and them have to get those points. They need to capitalize off of those steals and kind of run it up. The problem is, as of late, Jason Tatum has been turning the ball over too. So if it's going to be a game of just everybody turning it over, then
and Jaylen Brown's handle's been shaky too. Like
I wanted to talk about that. Like, it's not good at all, though.
He can't
dribble multiple times.
Yeah, and he's not the only good player that can't dribble.
But dribble off his foot. I think get ripped by like Victor Oladipo like 3 times in a row. Like,
that's something he needs to work on because he's a terrific athlete.
He's incredible. But I don't know. We'll see. It'll be very interesting.
Hopefully, he can tighten his handle by the NBA Finals.
No, heck no. He's lucky that Clay's down a little bit, so maybe he could just sneak past them. But no, that handle, it was crazy.
Speaking of handles, I wanted to mention, because people joke about it on Twitter a lot and other social media about Jaylen Brown. It's like Clyde Drexler really couldn't dribble. He would be looking down at the ground all the time. I'd be like, he just staring straight at the ground. It's just fun. The Hall of Famer Dominique Wilkins. I love Dominique. He's one of my favorite players. You watch him dribble the open court, you're like, oh my God, what is he gonna do? And you just have this goofy bang shots. I mean, so there's other guys like Jaylen Brown has hope. There's other guys that are really good that can't really dribble.
Yeah, but just direct line drive it, Ronnie. Stop trying to get tricky if you know you really can't do that. Like,
yeah. So speaking of handles, that's what we wanted to talk about today, and our main topic. We'll jump to that, and we'll jump back to some of the other secondary things after we have on a couple guests. We're going to have on a guest for this documentary, 30 for 30 of the And1. But speaking of handle, obviously, it came to fruition because of the skip tape, which came out like in 1999. It just blew up, one of the most viral basketball parlay moments ever in anything regarding basketball. And obviously, the doc came out recently. Ani, what did you just make of it? Obviously, it was an hour-long doc. It interviewed a lot of people. But what did you take away from that doc?
I was a little underwhelmed by it. I mean, I just thought it was it felt rushed. It just skipped. I mean, they had 60 minutes, so I get it. But I just felt like it didn't cover all the big, like, accomplishments or, where are they now? What are they doing now? How was compensation? They touched on some things, but they didn't really get into a lot of the, the meat and potatoes, that I would wish they talked about. They talked about how it kind of started. I thought that was cool, about the mixtape and Rafer Austin some, but I just thought it just skipped. It just skipped a lot of major. Like, I think on my honest opinion, if you watch And1 Mixtape 1, 2, and 3, you probably get a better feel of the overall history of it more so than watching that doc.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah. So the doc I thought was interesting. It brings back, like, Naclerio, the memories of what happened. It definitely was New York centric, and I have no problem with that. Like, New York is the mecca of streetball. I don't think people are going to argue that. It's obviously changed over time, but you have a lot of people that were noticeable. And I'll just be transparent on this doc. On this in the paint show, we wanted to get the professor on, who's a well-known street baller, probably arguably the most well-known street baller, and he had a decline because he wasn't involved. He wasn't interviewed. He wasn't involved at all. He wasn't mentioned. They did mention Hot Sauce. Obviously, he's one of the guys who came on after. Obviously, the original guys were like Half Man, Half Amazing, AO, Shane the Dribbling Machine. Those guys were all prominently mentioned. But then like you said, it branched off into culture, music, how it became. And obviously they had to talk about getting the skip tape out there, which they did. And to their credit, it happened so fast. It went viral so fast. It was so popular. They were doing it by the seat of their pants. Did you think that, Ani, that they covered that, like, to let people know, whether they're younger, maybe they didn't know that part of basketball, maybe they're just NBA fans, that what the hell happened? How did this get so big? How did this get into the stores? How did this get nationwide? I mean, how did people have that tape? And it's part of their collection now.
Right. No, I thought that was the best part of it, in my opinion, just like talking about that, the skip tapes and how that came about and how, one kid's like, hey, I'm just going to film him, hooping at the park. And then like, with when his high school coach was saying like people were asking, for highlights and say, hey, I don't have, much game film from high school, but I have his mixtapes. And then talking about how like putting it in the shoe store and how it blew up, and I think after like 2 weeks they sold 200,000 copies. I thought that was a good like base to kind of talk about, where it went from there. But that's something I didn't know about, and I thought a lot of younger generation, they didn't know anything about that. A lot don't really know about Skip to My Lou. So
like I hear the people obviously know Skip, and they're like, well, Skip played for the Rockets in Orlando, and they're like, oh, okay, whatever. I like the tape. And then other people who are more maybe, I guess, quote unquote traditional fans, they're like, oh, Skip was on that tape. Like, I just thought he was our point guard. He's our Rockets point guard with T-Mac and Yao Ming. Like, they don't know about it. And then obviously he went on to Orlando and played in the NBA Finals. I was really happy for him when he made it to the finals, because I knew he was an NBA point guard when I'd seen him. So like that, he had the skill to play that. And I went to the tour at Venice Beach in 2002 and maybe 2003 2 times. And it was really that big. It was exciting. It was free. They threw out gear. People enjoyed it. There were so many people that just enjoyed it. Maybe they had, you got to remember, LeBron James hadn't entered the NBA yet. Honestly, you guys, if you remember, the NBA was kind of in a hangover for Michael Jordan. They had the lockout. The Spurs won the title after that lockout. People were like, I don't want to see the Spurs, and the Lakers were winning, but like, there wasn't that thing they clung to. They kind of looked, nobody knew Kobe and Shaq what was going to happen with them, or that Kobe was going to be on the Lakers for the next 15 years after that. So people would look something forward. They wanted something forward to look to, and Skip was their guy, or Skip and the guys who followed. And then that's the other thing about the documentary. You talk about the tour, Ani, and it went on to about 06, 07. They did mention how it kind of waned, and it maybe wasn't as popular, and they kind of mentioned that it was harder to do tricks and harder to get the crowd excited because they seen so much.
Everything.
They had to start bouncing it off people's head, trying to take their shirts off, and then it got a little convoluted. They did mention that. So that was good. And there's so much they can mention. We want to talk a little bit with Ron Naclerio, who's Rafer Alston's high school coach at Cardozo in Bayside, Queens. Ron's been the coach a lot longer than Skip got there. He's been the coach like for 40 years.
Oh, wow.
Many kids. Yeah, he's been there since 1981. So we want to get his perspective, because obviously he was a big part of the doc. And like you said, Ani, getting those tapes to And1 and how that became about. They did mention, but it happened so fast. I know some people were a little unhappy, like, yo, I'm in this tape. I think Main Event mentioned in the doc, Ani, like, yo, he's watching the tape in a shoe store, and he's like, that's me. The guy
didn't believe him at first.
The guy was like, that ain't you. He's like, oh shit, that's you. Yeah, what is that, or what are you guys doing? So, it happened so fast. So it's very interesting. A topic like Chelsea, what did you were obviously in junior high coming into high school, and when that was getting popular, or did you watch the show on ESPN after in the later years, or did you just kind of follow it a bit?
I mean, I think everybody was pretty much following it when I was in high school. Like, I graduated 2008. It was a big deal for anybody that played. That was when And1 was pumping out the merch too. So you had all the shirts that said like, dunk on your mama, like, crazy little crazy like slogans that they had. But it was a big deal. Like, I used to always try to emulate, the handle stuff that you would see, obviously to a certain extent, like, sick with it. Like you said, he's throwing the ball off of people's head and, doing the robot, like this stuff that you obviously can't do on the court. But I think it was a big deal when I was in high school. Like, everybody pretty much knew about it. I don't really know if everybody knew so in depth about it. Like, we just knew, hey, And1 Mixtape is a thing. Here you can watch it here, whatever. We're watching, the episodes as they go. But it was more just about the basketball for us. And I think that, And1 is also just a culture. But, for me at the time, I'm not thinking, oh, this is New York and this is this. I'm thinking, oh my God, the professor and Sick With It and Hot Sauce can really dribble. And here I go trying to practice it. Like it was really just that simple as a kid. But, definitely just remember the memories of just having the T-shirts and the gear and stuff. And just kind of enjoying watching the episode when I would catch it on TV.
Yeah. For somebody like yourself, it must have been cool to see that progress to a TV show, and the doc did a good job of talking about how it started. But yeah, there's definitely some things it didn't mention, and it just went real fast. It didn't say what happened, how did the tour die down, and obviously, as we know, some of the guys on the tour either got disenfranchised or disappointed, or they did their own thing, and then there was like a ball up tour. Things continued, but they didn't really mention that, and it continued with some of those guys. So obviously, it seemed like the OGs, the originals, were on the dock. Rafer, AO, the guys we mentioned, half man, half amazing, and then the younger guys were just left off, and why they were left off, I don't know, but it was definitely something that we definitely need to talk about more. We'll talk about it with our guest, Ron Naclerio, who's Skip to My Lose coach. Let's bring in Coach Naclerio now and get his take. Coach, are you there?
I'm there. Can you hear me? See me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Yeah.
We appreciate you taking the time to jump on. We have a lot to ask you, so hold on. We can see you. I'm glad you could jump on the In the Paint show, Coach. How are you doing? I know you're busy, and I thought you were going to be hanging out with Jadakiss watching that doc. Your boy Jadakiss, our
Oh, we lost him.
So let's see if we get him back up here.
You're gonna get me back. You got me back.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I have half of New York City calling and texting because this Saturday I'm running a special event that why I'm doing it, I don't know, but the event is at Rucker Park.
Okay.
There are 4 schools playing. All 4 of those schools have been invited because one of their very own had been shot and killed.
Wow.
It'll be the first high school tournament where every school got invited because one of their own got shot and killed. Unfortunately, I've had 2 shot and killed in the last 3 years. And my point guard on the JV team, his father got shot and killed in the head a couple of weeks ago. Police officer Jason Rivera was one of the 2 officers shot and killed in January. He's at Wheels. So unfortunately, every 2 seconds, I'm getting a phone call. The mayor called early this morning. He wants to come. What time should he be there? And so I got so much in that. But last night, I did get a chance to watch it because the game I had up in Harlem, thank God the team forfeited the second game. And I actually got in my house, 7:59 New York time.
So talk a little bit about your initial
Can you hear me?
doc. Yes,
We
sir.
can hear you.
We can hear you. Talk a little bit about your initial reaction to the doc. You just saw.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
We can hear you, Coach.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
I don't think he can hear us.
He can't hear us. Maybe he's muted. Okay.
Well, let's see if he could jump back on.
Dang, he has a heavy New York accent, though.
Very.
Coach Naclerio definitely has a heavy New York accent. I did know about some of his dealings with his player being shot, and he's very busy. Like I said, he's been a coach there since 1981. Skip came as a freshman in about 1990, and he was very small, 5'8", but he could really handle the ball. And Coach Naclerio really helped him in that. Let's see if we can get Coach here. Can you hear us, Coach?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
All right, but I'm not going to touch anything.
Yeah.
No.
Don't touch anything, Coach. What was your initial reaction to the hour-long doc last night?
I think they tried to include too much in a short amount of time, which is tough. And I think they should have hopped on a little more of the original And1 mixtape, how it came from Rucker. The other park was Lincoln Park near John F. Kennedy High School, where Lamar Odom grew up 2 blocks away. It also didn't talk about why Greg would not let And1 in the park. And what happened was And1 got the tapes from me. They signed Rafer tried to market Rafer as an NBA player. And the tapes were out, and it was like, you got them from Naclerio? Yes. Did you get his permission? They made the tape without even asking us if they could make it. So now the tapes are out. I didn't want to do anything to hurt Rafer.
Sure.
But Greg Marius said, wait a second. Naclerio's handing you millions of dollars. If it's done right, you're not even going to sit down and talk. And Greg ended up suing And1.
Oh, wow.
So that's a whole story about the real part that people don't realize. And now you can understand when Greg said And1 can't come into the park. You know, I look at things like this. The pizza pie philosophy. If I have a pizza pie, there's 8 slices. I'll give you a slice. I'll give you 2 slices. Sometimes I'll give you 3 or 4. Maybe I'll even give you the whole pie. But now that you're getting the pizza pie and I don't have the pie, well, I would kind of
expect you to share.
Yeah, give me a slice or 2. So, and you know, that's the part that I don't like about basketball, the money part. You know, I've never done anything for money. You know, I'd like to coach and find out that, gee, I'm getting a Steve Kerr salary or a Greg Popovich salary instead of getting, you know, chump change. So, but that's just the way it is. I love what I do. I'm a junkie. And, you know, there were parts of that tape that there was a game at OCP, O'Connell Park, where a lot of the And1 Mixtapes guys were from, including Escalade, Troy Jackson. And we played there, and I actually played. I had a couple of highlights that I'm surprised they didn't use, and there was a highlight of me that I actually made my skip to my Lou move around the back, between the legs, a dime looking right to the guy left. So, but, you know, I didn't even think they realized footage that's out there that wasn't used. And I think they went too much into the future. Basically, it should have been maybe an hour and a half, 2-hour documentary if you really wanted to do it. And some of the people could have asked the originals a lot more questions, which would have made them veer down certain roads. I thought the tape was really good. I thought it was like a 99. It could have been a 100 plus.
Gotcha.
Coach, can you just talk about a little bit about your relationship with Rafer or Skip? When did you guys first meet? You know, what was, you know, your kind of first thoughts about him? Could he always handle the ball like that, or was that something that he just kind of picked up?
I remember hearing about a kid at PS40 that's going to come to IS8 where I taught. Now, IS8 has an incredible legacy of having that IS8 tournament and also the legacy of so many great players. There was one time 34 IS8 graduates were playing on varsity teams at high schools from one junior high. That's incredible.
Wow.
And I heard about this young kid, and during 6th grade going into 7th, being in South Jamaica, a kid comes over and taps me. Hey, coach, it was a little scrawny kid, looked like a shorty. You know, that's what his original nickname was at Rucker Park, Shorty, because we put him in the game as a 12-year-old when he must have been 5'1".
Oh, wow.
So he says he's coming to IS8. Now, Rafer knew not only the game as a player, but he knew the game as far as, you know, NBA players and high schools and who was good and all city players. So he knew who I was. And next thing you know, Bernie Goldberg, the vice principal of Junior High School 8, had a team. I told Bernie about him. And first thing he did was he put Rafer in the 1 class, because IS8 was a lower functioning academic school.
Okay.
He put Rafer in the high level class. So hopefully that when he went on to high, he would be able to, you know, the work would not be as big a gap.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, and then, you know, I saw how talented Rafer was. And, you know, I've worked out many a basketball play. I was the original workout guy in the 80s and 90s. You see all these guys now, the Chris Brinkleys and, you know, all these other guys that make a lot of money doing this. And I would do it, and I would show Rafer drills that he would perfect in a second. And I would keep on adding and adding and adding. And it got to the point I had to really think of drills to do because Rafer mastered them at a quickness rate that I've worked out NBA guys that didn't pick up.
They couldn't figure it out.
Yeah,
Wow.
not like that, not at that quickness rate. And then, you know, Rafer started coming to some Cardozo games because some of the kids he looked up to that were in 9th grade when he was in 6th grade were now at Cardozo. Guys like Gary Rush, Gregory James, Raheem Oates, who actually went to Cal State Bakersfield and won 2 Division II championships in a row. Ty Boogie Davis from Bishop Loughlin. Now, why they ended up at Cal State Bakersfield was they had the same disease that had Rafer caught, you know, academicitis. So they ended up going to junior college and did really well, but they couldn't transfer over to Division I schools. So it was only natural that Rafer wanted to come to Cardozo, but a lot of the college schools wanted Rafer to show up. And I remember the Catholic high school semifinals one year. Rafer was in 7th grade, and at halftime, Rafer was on the court, maybe trying to be a ball boy or something, and he ended up playing this other kid one-on-one, and next thing I hear the crowd, Rafer was doing all the skip to my loose stuff before he was and all the coaches were, who's this kid? Who's this kid? And it's like, oh my God, I might actually not have Rafer come to Cardozo now because of.
Oh, he froze.
Yeah, froze on him. But yeah, I mean, obviously he.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah. So, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You can hear me?
Yes, sir. Keep going.
Good.
I can hear you.
Hey, I got to give you a little love. That was the school's chancellor's office, and I had to hang up on him. So, you know.
Sure.
Why he's calling him about the event Saturday. You know, hey, what could I do? But yeah, Rafer. One of the things I was worried about was Rafer wasn't that tall. He was small, and I thought Rafer might only grow to be Shaheem Holloway's 5'8", 5'9", 10. Never envisioned Rafer going to legitimately 2 1/4, which he did. That kind of alleviated my fears because I always thought Rafer would be.
Got you, Coach. Wow. Let's talk a little bit about his senior year. Obviously, he coasted California for a little while. What were his options then? You mentioned obviously his academics had to get in order. What were his options as a senior year in 93, 94 at Cardozo? Was he thinking about going west, back to junior college? Was he going to go to a prep school? What were you guys thinking then? You know, he only played a handful of games his senior year. What was his thought process, and what was your thought process to help him?
Well, the problem that had a fight with Rafer, and he said it on a couple of podcasts, was he gravitated toward the streets and easy money. Okay. And that was ugly. I remember 1 or 2 times Rafer was allowed 1 phone call, and he called either myself or Billy Medley or his mom, Geraldine, to get a hold of Mike Bell, Coach Naclerio, or Billy Medley to get him out of jail. And as he got older and started fessing up, we realized that we were not only fighting science, social studies, and math homework assignments, we were fighting the streets where, you know, Rafer would make some money doing things he shouldn't do. And then Rafer all of a sudden started playing dice, CeeLo. So it was really hard. And when people say Rafer made the NBA off the Mixtape or Rafer made the NBA off of Rucker Park, that is absolutely false. Because I would like there's Clark Kent and Superman. There's Rafer Alston. Rafer, who can actually run high school, college, and pro team, like orchestra leader. And then Skip to my Lou, who could have more tricks than the serial trick. You know, will embarrass you. And, you know, I'll give you one story. Headache. Him getting Headache knew he was going to get a chance to go against Rafer at Ballislife Park in a tournament. And for a week or two, every time I saw Headache, he was telling me what he was going to do to Rafer. Rafer always showed up to games late. So if the game started at 8:30, it was nowhere to be found until 8:31 the earliest. So the game starts at Ballislife Park in anticipation of this place is packed, like Rucker packed. Headaches popping junk. Rafer's not there. He's scared. He's like, come on. So all of a sudden, a couple of minutes into the game, Rafer running into the park. Park goes crazy. My assistant coach who coached Rafer, Billy Medley, JYO, throws him a uniform top, calls timeout. Rafer gets changed. They're on the court. The Headaches down doing all this And1 mixtape type stuff. Rafer's playing basic. He gets it. Comes down the court. You know, basic basketball. So Headaches doing this hot dog move, blah, blah, blah. So after about 4 or 5 minutes of Headache trying to embarrass Rafer with a move, Rafer steals the ball, comes down the court, leaps up in the air, winds up with the ball in his right hand, throws the ball straight down as high as he can. The ball's bouncing. Rafer starts doing jumping jacks. And it seemed like the ball would not lose the height of its bounce. So finally, Headache goes to reach for the ball. Rafer beats him to the ball, puts it around Headache's head, around Rafer's neck, flips it around his left ear to a cutting, I forgot the kid's name, for a Damon Jeter. And Damon hits the layup. The ref calls a foul, even though it wasn't a foul. The crowd was, and next thing you know, the crowd threw aspirins at Headache.
That's funny.
That's a great story.
So what happened 2 minutes later, because now the game is on. There was a shooting near the hot dog stand. People ran for their lives. And that was the end of the game.
Wow.
Well, Coach, let's keep moving on and talk to you about, like you said, he goes junior college. He gets it somewhat in order. He's keeping it together. He's at Ventura. So now he decides he's going to apply to the NBA draft after his junior year.
No. He was at Ventura with Phil Matthews. They won the state championship. And Jerry Tarkanian gets the job at Fresno.
Correct. I don't.
Incoming call.
He's getting.
Yeah, he got an incoming call.
He's gonna keep getting incoming calls, but yeah, you know, obviously, Rafer played the 1 year at Ventura. Then he sat out a season because he wanted to play for Tarkanian at Fresno State, and he played the 96 season. Yep, Coach.
Yeah, am I
back?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear us?
I think we lost him. So
we'll get him back.
Yeah, let's just see if we can get him back. If not, we'll keep moving on. I know a lot of what he's talking about, and I wanted to keep it going. Let me see. Coach, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah,
we can hear you.
Phone calls. Tell us a little bit about Tarkanian and then him going into the NBA. Obviously, played at Fresno City.
Well, what happens is Jerry Tarkanian gets the job at Fresno, calls me up because I had a relationship way back with him sending him Lloyd Daniels, which
Sure.
didn't turn out too good.
No.
But he did right by Lloyd, though. Lloyd loved him, and Lloyd had a tough family situation that Tark became like a surrogate father. So he calls me up saying, Coach, I want to get Stephon Marbury.
Sure.
You're not getting Marbury. What do I got to do? Hire his brother? You're not getting him. But I go, you can get the next best thing.
Yeah.
What do you mean? So I tell him about Rafer.
Yep.
He flies in. I meet with him, with Billy Medley and Mike Bell at the Marriott right next to LaGuardia Airport. And that night, Rafer plays at the Rucker. So I pick up Tark. We go over the bridge. We're pulling up to the Rucker. The place is packed. He couldn't believe it. He looks and he sees the Polo Ground houses. He goes, Ron, how many people live in, you think? I said about 10,000. He couldn't believe it.
Wow.
So we pull in the back of the Rucker, the park, where there's a little softball field for the kids. And as we park, we're getting out of the car. There's this big black guy urinating. The guy turns and does a double take when he sees Tark. He goes, Coach. He comes running to Tark. The guy urinating was Richie Adams.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm listening.
I'm
Go
getting
ahead.
so low now. I don't know why.
We can hear you.
Okay. So Rafer shows up late. 5 minutes in, Rafer becomes Skip to my Lou. Makes a crazy move. Tark taps me on the shoulder. Oh, by the way, when Tark walked in, he got mad love. Mad love.
Sure.
He asked, what did he do? Because he never saw anything like this. So now the game is over. He goes to Billy and I. What do I got to do to get him? So Billy and I knew the headaches that Rafer. So we goes, what do you mean, dude? You got him. Take him. Take him with you now. Yeah. And so the game plan was to go to Fresno City.
Sure.
And then he went to Fresno. They had that, talent, Folks and Rafer and Chris Herron and all those guys. Larry Abney. I forgot the 6'10" kid. And so now Rafer ends up getting arrested for domestic abuse, problem with hitting a girl, or supposedly hitting a girl, and they're going to throw him out of Fresno. So we did everything we could to try to see what we can do. And there was a 1% chance if Rafer did A, B, C, D, did this, did that, and go in front of the school student body, there was only a 1% chance. That was not good. So Billy Medley, my assistant coach, says, Ron, you got to convince Rafer to put his name in the draft. I was skeptical.
Oh, wow.
So one thing leads to another. We run it by Rafer. Rafer, okay, we run it by his mother. We explain, that if we do go back to Fresno, there's only a 1% chance he's going to be allowed to play. The other option was to transfer Division I because there was no portal then.
Of course.
So Rafer wasn't going D2. So Rafer says, okay, I'll put my name in the draft. So the deadline for the draft that year, I think was May 12th. It was a Saturday. So Rafer doesn't do anything that he's supposed to do that Wednesday, that Thursday, that Friday. Billy calls me up. Says, Ron, you know what to do. What do you mean? He goes, you write the letter for Rafer.
Yeah.
So I call Rafer. I say, Rafer, you didn't do anything. Rafer, I'm going to write the letter signing your name. So I quickly write 2 letters to David Stern. Rafer Alston, put my name in the Naclerio draft, blah, 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 sign Rafer Alston. Why 2? Well, one was from the envelope had Rafer's Fresno address, and one had his mother's address. So now it had to be postmarked, and all the post offices were closed.
Oh, wow.
So if I stick it in a mailbox that the post office closes at 5 or 6 New York time, it'll be postmarked that Monday. No good.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one post office that stays open until midnight. The one across the street from Madison Square Garden. Well, it's about 11:15. I drive like a lunatic into the city, double park my car, saying, you know what, if I get a ticket, I get a ticket. I'm waiting online, and at 11:58, I get the letter in, and I make the one to his mother, return receipt. And I tell Billy what I did. I didn't even tell his mother. And then it was a little different because, you know, it wasn't like you blast it that quickly. We wait a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, in the newspaper, all of the early entrants in the draft, the list. And Rafer was one of the first because they did it alphabetized, Alston. And was like, whew.
Made it.
And then Rafer gets invited to the NBA pre-draft. I go out there with him. Plays great. Plays himself into the first round.
Mm.
And I know all the NBA teams were coming over to me, asking me, you know, the background check. And I know San Antonio said, Ron, let's take you out to lunch. We want to talk about Rafer. And it ended up, I said, well, I know you're flying Rafer in for a workout. You ask these questions. We go, no, coach, we know he's going to lie. You know, they know. You know, he's going to tell us what we want to hear. We want to hear from you. So that's when I was honest and I told him everything because I didn't want to. I think I helped Rafer by telling the truth.
Yeah.
And the day of the draft, Rafer gets a phone call from Jerry West. They fly him from Fresno for a last-minute workout. And in the interview, Jerry West hits him with a couple of questions about him and his family's background, specifically his father. And I didn't think Rafer liked that because I think that's the reason why the Lakers did not take Rafer. They took Tyronn Lue over him. So
Wow.
that's the story of that.
So, Coach, now Rafer's in the NBA. How did And1 get him? How was it possible And1 getting involved?
Well, And1 was looking to sign some guys to market like Nike and, you know, and Adidas did. So Rafer was the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how the whole, you know, they tried to use his mixtapes to, you know, market Rafer and hope that Rafer, as time would go on, would become a verifiable NBA player, which he did, and then an NBA star. And, you know, there was one year Rafer was with Toronto where Pete Vesey, the legendary Pete Vesey, was actually saying Rafer should get some strong consideration to make the All-Star team.
Mm.
And, you know, that's the business part that I don't know. I'm not that smart at. You know, if I was, I'm sure if I had that, you know, Rafer's made his money being skipped to my Lou, and I'm glad. And, you know, I'm glad that I was in his life, along with Mike Bell and Billy Medley, to veer him straight when he certainly was making a strong left turn or a strong right turn instead of going straight.
Sure. Coach, let's mention the players on the tour a little bit, if you know that, and when Rafer was in the NBA. Did you notice any, you know, did they have any jealousy of him?
Yeah, there was some jealousy because
long, you know, what was going on there that kind of created a little rift?
Well, you know what it was? Rafer was the king. All of them were princes or queens. They were not, no matter what they did, they couldn't be Rafer. You know, some thought they were as good as Rafer. Some might not have liked the fact wherever they went, it was like basically Rafer Alston and the other And1 mixtape guys. But Rafer, to his credit, When there was a beef, there was no problem. You know, he tried to share the pizza pie, share the wealth with them all. Because Rafer, biggest goal was to not become the greatest Mix One on tour tape.
Mhm.
His goal was to become the verifiable, let me get myself a long-term multi-million NBA deal player.
Coach, real quick, did you see any players, just kind of being around the tour and the mixtape culture, like that you felt like, you said everybody wanted to be Rafer and be in his shoes and maybe touch the league. They felt that they were better. Do you personally feel like there was any other players that maybe could have had an NBA stint or,
Adrian Walton had a chance. Kareem Reed, who really wasn't on that, if he just could have stretched it out, 15, 20-foot jumper, he had the heart. He was great. There was a big guy, Shane Drisden, Captain Nappy.
Sure.
I thought he could have played in like a shot blocking type, rebounding role, like one of my former players who Rafer looked up to and visited when he was playing for the Sacramento Kings when Rafer was in Fresno, Dwayne Coswell, who was the 1990 first-round pick of the Kings. So, I'm sure there were others, but, you don't realize it. You have to have the total package.
Absolutely.
Sure.
You have to have, if you could just get to the rim at the Rucker, well, that doesn't mean you're going to get to the rim
in the NBA.
In an NBA court.
Right.
Sure.
And you have 26 ridiculous moves that get oohs and ahs, but you have 8 or 9 sloppy turnovers.
Yeah.
You can't turn the ball over as a point guard.
Doesn't translate.
And in a lot of these guys that were the And1 mixtape guards, they passed out of necessity, not correct time. The Rafer knew when to give up the ball. Jeff Van Gundy, when they traded for Rafer, told me he watched all 82 games of Rafer. And what he said to me was that Rafer always made the correct easy pass. He would put it where the big man wanted it without having to be moved. That was the big thing. Yao Ming loved. Rafer always gave Yao Ming the ball without him having to lose balance or lose the space that he earned on the block. And people don't realize that. He was great not only at the hot dog passes, he was great at the simple passes.
I like that. So, Coach, did And1 do anything for you? Like, just kind of as,
at the end,
payback for the skip tape?
At the end, Greg sued him. I don't know what he got. He might have gotten $5,000 or so. They ended up writing a check for me for $1,500, which when I got the check, there were 3 summer tournament entry fees. So right there, half of the check went to put in Cardozo in summer league tournament. So
sure,
what can you do?
Because was there any other shoe companies that was looking to endorse Rafer while he was in the league?
I'm sure Rafer had opportunities to disassociate himself, or if his contract ran out to sign with them. But that's with Rafer. You'd have to ask Rafer that. And, I just told Rafer, you're going to make life-changing money, so you better make life-changing decisions. You don't gamble. You don't play CeeLo. You don't do any stupid stuff that you blow the millions that you worked hard to earn. So as a surrogate coach, becoming the father figure with all my players, there comes a time you hope that all the lessons you taught them, you showed them, you brought them to, that you let them go like a pigeon flying and they fly correct.
Sure. Yeah. We appreciate that input, Coach. One question, we'll let you go. We know you got to get ready, and you got a lot of phone calls coming in. With this pandemic, is it made just things can already be difficult, as you mentioned with Rafer's background, things that already be difficult for some of your players. Is it just that much harder? I know you guys didn't have a season, and you obviously lost a few players, and you have this tournament coming up because players have perished or been shot. Tell us a little bit about that and what can be different, or what's happening with this pandemic in New York, and what you guys got planned going forward.
The pandemic destroyed so many people. Young kids not learning how to grow emotionally, learning to grow physically, no interaction. Too many New York City kids are getting obituaries before getting high school diplomas.
Sure.
Too many New York City students have signed on with gangs, then signed on getting academic or athletic scholarship. Something has to change because New York City is taking a big, big hit. The school's chancellor, David Banks, a friend of mine, he's trying to do what he can. Mayor Eric Adams, who went to the other high school in Bayside, Cardozo's in Bayside, he went to Bayside High School. He's got his hands full with, the gun violence and the violence on the subways and the fear, and he's trying to change it. And he's finding out that some people are making it even harder for him to put in rules and regulations. But I think he's the guy. I hope he's the guy, because I know he's going to go down fighting. It's like a V. And New York's getting really bad. I'm hoping now we're at the bottom, so now the V can start coming up. I'm hoping it's still not sinking before we hopefully V up. I'd like to think we're going to try to V and go up into a positive direction.
Sure. We as well, and we hope that, obviously, we hope there's more positive stories, and we hope Saturday goes well for your event. Tell people out there what this event is. Just give the particulars, the time and what location, and we'll let you go.
Rucker Park, 155th Street, Frederick Douglass Boulevard. Each One Teach One's going to play the Greg Marius All-Stars at 12:30. Then it's going to be Cardozo representing Amir Griffin, who was shot and killed, and Yao Pabi's dad, who was shot and killed 6 weeks ago. We're going to play Julia Richmond, Lamar Gibson, who was shot 2020. Then at 3:30, we're going to have James Monroe High School. Brandon Hendricks was shot and killed July 2020 at a barbecue.
Wow.
They're going to play Wheels High School. Officer Jason Rivera was shot and killed, I think, January 26th of this year. He was one of the police officers shot and killed in Harlem. Then we're going to have a special ceremony honoring the families, and hopefully, the politicians, and I know the NBA, the guy Marvin Williams' father's flying up. He's ahead of the NBA players' dads. Royal Ivy, assistant coach of the Brooklyn Nets, will be there. Last minute people come. We're going to have the ceremony. Then we're going to have the two winners play, and I'd like to think Cardozo's going to win. And then my biggest emotional substitution I'm probably going to make, the second there's a dead whistle, the first blown whistle or stoppage of play, where I'm going to sub in Yao Pabi, the 14-year-old freshman. He's going to enter to honor his dad, and his backcourt partner will be Warnell Tootie Wells, the father of Amir Griffin, playing in honor of his son. So that will be a special, special moment where the dad playing for the son and the son playing for the dad. And I think there'll be a couple of tears when that happens.
Well, Coach, we appreciate it. We appreciate all you've done. We appreciate the candid insight about your program, about New York, and about Rafer. So appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you for
Thanks,
coming.
Coach.
Thank you. I learned honesty is the best policy. So best of luck with the show, and God bless you.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Take care.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Chelsea, I know that touches things like for you, that touches your heart.
Yeah, I mean, because it's an incredible cause and event that they're putting on. It just sucks that it's under those circumstances. Like, we're all here because somebody was killed, on every single team. Like,
yeah, that's
it's tough. Like, and these are kids too, though. That's what makes it sad to me. Like, These are babies, kids that didn't even have a chance to, experience so much things in their life and stuff like that. So it's really heartbreaking to me, along with all the other stuff that's happening in the world and recently in Texas. And it's just like, when does it slow down if it's not going to end? Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't even talk about Texas at all. Obviously, we're talking about the shooting that killed 19 kids and I believe 2 adults. We're not going to get too much into it, but we did want to at least mention it. And obviously, that's a story that Chelsea, you mentioned on a couple pods ago. Like, we're going to keep moving on, and it's going to happen again. And you were talking about Buffalo, and you were right. It happened again, and we have to move on. But
the following day in Richardson, the ISDs got in lockdown because a kid threatened to shoot up the school.
Yeah,
there's already been like 10, since the Texas, elementary school attack. There's already been like 10 other mass, shootings since then. Like it's like nuts. I told you, I'm so like desensitized to stuff that's happening, and it's terrible because it's heartbreaking. But it's like, should I mourn this one? Because I mean, Tuesday of next week, it might be something else. Like, it's sick.
Yeah, it's nuts. And Naclerio wears his heart on his sleeve, even when he talks about Skip. Oh, Skip is great. He's joking half the time, but half the time he's telling the truth. And it's very interesting. We talk about the Skip tape in 1999 and And1 becoming of age. He won the city championship that year, and like he was crying almost like a little boy, like a little boy, very emotional to his players. He loves them, and he's God. I mean, how many he's coached over the years? Like I said, he's been coaching there at Cardozo in Queens since 1981. So. He gave us a lot more than I had expected. I wanted to talk a little bit about the background of Skip and how it would relate to like him coming to California. We just didn't have the time to get all into it.
Yeah.
But I saw him. He left Cardozo, and I guess he was going through what he was going through. And Rodney Parker, who was like a street agent, a well-known street agent who'd been around New York since the 70s, he got skipped to California, Riverside North. And I was like, yes, I've heard about this guy. This guy's coming to California. I'm like, I can't wait to see him. He played in some summer leagues. And I said, he's going to be a really good player. They might win the state championship. And, I'd been involved in covering, like, I wanted to know all about these players. I hadn't quite worked for student sports and Cal High sports yet. And I was like, man, this is good. We're going to get, I always liked it when we get new players or guys transferred in. And you just heard it kind of by word of mouth. And then next thing you know, like the preseason, like lists come out in the Hot 100, which we're still doing now on CalHighSports.com. But like, Rafer wasn't there when the season started. I was like, dang, like, well, man, that's jacked up. And I didn't really know what happened. You read a magazine here, you figure out, what's going on. And I didn't really know he was back at Cardozo. And he maybe played like 6 or 7 games his senior year. And then he went back to California, and I got to see him because my buddies were playing junior college ball. So that's what the doc kind of brought me back memories of, is all the junior college ball, because in the early 90s into mid 90s, and I didn't really know it then, I thought it was just a natural progression. I was like, oh yeah, most of these guys are going to JUCO, like they're JUCO guys, they're really good. I go, they're D1, I know they're D1. I didn't really realize how much the academics was affecting these guys, and some of them were my good friends, and some of them are still my friends now. I just thought it was a normal progression. It's like, Ani, I don't know if you know, but California has a bunch of junior colleges.
You have a lot.
And there's good players sometimes, and there's been years where there's not good players. And, it was just like an academic wasteland in many regards. They just weren't getting prepared. And many of them did go on a D1, but not at the level that they maybe could have won if they would have had their grades intact. And I didn't really understand that at this. I said, so I was like, yeah, he's going to go to LA Harbor, and he's going to go to UC Riverside. He's going to go to Fresno State. He's going to go to San Jose State. I thought that's where the level, and that was normal. But now that I look back at it, it was so disheartening, because now that's not even like the academic side of the guys go, do it later, or they take a year of prep. There's all these more options.
Right.
And I just thought like it was a big missed opportunity, Prop 48. The guys had it. Basically, you couldn't pass the 700 SAT, you went JUCO, or if they took you like a Penny Hardaway, there was a few guys that schools took anyway, and they had to sit out that one first year, and they only had 3 years of eligibility. So it's crazy how you look at it now, and guys have 5-6 years of eligibility. back then those guys had 3 years. I don't know if you had the 2 years of JUCO, you had to get your AA, and you only had 2 years. So, you know, Rafer was obviously talented enough. And that's the other thing when I went out to watch the And1 Mixtape tournament, I didn't want to, you know, I liked a bunch of the guys. We all have our favorites. I was always looking like, how good is he? And I said, NBA, Rafer's the NBA guard. He had pretty good long arms, big broad shoulders. He was working out a lot. I think we even have a photo of him like in his Fresno State uniform. He's pretty built, built. You know? He's pretty ripped. So he did it right, and obviously he had Naclerio and other people on his side and on his team. I'm not sure from basically some of the stuff Naclerio said. I'm not sure he would have made it without those 3 guys.
Oh, absolutely not.
Right.
Guiding him the right way, and luckily the California Junior College route was there to kind of get away from some of the madness that I imagine was in New York. But one of the swift gears, we're going to have Matt Rodriguez, the president of Ballislife, come on here in a few minutes, and he's going to talk more about, like, he's a little bit older than you, Chelsea, so he's going to give his take about what he kind of remembers from a fan perspective, and then talk about the business side and maybe how it affected Ballislife going forward. You know, he obviously started his company as the And1 Mixtape tour was kind of winding down, like about 06, 07, and we just kind of want to get his take and his insight from another aspect, you know, from the fan and from the business side.
Right.
So, you know, it's been it's just most likely taking me down memory lane. I was so happy for Skip. I'm a big Skip fan. You know, obviously I got to know Naclerio over the years, but I was just so happy that he made it. I mean, did you guys have that thought, like, man, this guy made the NBA, or did you guys want to see the other guys make the NBA? Did you guys think they were not good enough? Like, what did you kind of know in that time frame, like say like 05, 06, 07, as the tour was real popular and then kind of winding down?
I always wondered, like, I was in middle school, kind of was going, why they weren't in the NBA. Because I'll tell you, like, the first time I watched And1 Mixtape, I was in the middle school camp. Like, my the middle school I was in, they hosted a camp, and the coach probably wanted to just have some time because he was tired of coaching us, you know, during the camp. It was an all-day deal. He just put it on, and I was like, yo, like, why are these guys not in the NBA? Like, and then when I got older, and it's funny, like, when I was in college, there was like a yard sale, and like there was the And1 Mixtapes. So I went and bought it, and then I went and watched it again, and I was like, oh yeah, this makes sense. Like, like this makes sense. Like, you know, they didn't show them like smoking, but you know they were smoking. You know, they weren't really working out.
It was very uncut.
Yeah, very uncut. And at the end of one tape, they showed like a full game, and you just saw the turnovers and all the sloppiness, and you're like, makes sense. Like it makes sense. But when you're just watching it, like watch at like 13, 14 years old, like, these dudes should be in the NBA. Like, put them in the All-Star game. Yeah. And then 20, 21 years old, I'm like, oh shit, man.
Yeah. I think I had the same thought, Ani, because, you know, just being a fan of the tapes and stuff too. When Skip made it, I was like, well, he's not even the best one. Like, well, at least to me, like, I thought other guys were just better than him. But, you know, now just being a player and growing up and like understanding the game, it's like, okay, yeah, like there's a lot of people who can play street ball and very few people who can play organized ball and do it well. And, you know, coach spoke to that. That was just the difference. Like, he had all the fancy stuff, but he had all the fundamental stuff too. And that's kind of what separated him. So I remember thinking the same thing, Ani. You know, I was a huge fan of the professor. I was a huge fan of Sick with It and just, you know, those players too. But, you know, Rafer was the real deal. And when he made it, I think it was pretty exciting because, you know, I was a fan of both, kind of just watching the NBA and street ball as well. So,
and a real quick note before we get Matt on here, Sick with It played junior college at Chafee as well. AO played junior college in California. So Sick with It actually played against Rafer in a playoff game, a regional final, Chafee versus Ventura his freshman year. And I was like, these guys are so good, man. I just thought at the time, like, junior college ball was really fast-paced, guard-oriented, really good. Except they weren't shooting threes like they did now, but everything was to the rim, fast, shit-talking. It was just a great atmosphere. So let's bring on Matt now, and we'll talk to him a little bit and get his take. Matt, how's it going?
It's going all right. Nice to meet you, Chelsea and Ani.
How's it going?
Definitely a fan of what you guys are doing with Ronnie on here and in the paint.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, appreciate you with the kind words. I know you're going to have some not so kind words when we talk about what's going on with this doc and just in general. But, Matt, you obviously saw it. What's your just highline take?
I know I was texting you back and forth a little bit last night, but I really felt like it was more of a reminiscing about New York basketball. When I was growing up in the early 2000s, you always looked at New York basketball as being like the mecca of basketball, but that's obviously changed in the last like 20 years. I think as far as like street ball goes and just like the pro-ams and all those types of things, it's really shifted over into other areas around the country. But obviously they learned from some of the leagues that were happening in New York City, but they brought that to their own like geographical location. So if you're talking about the Seattle Pro-Am with Jamal Crawford or the Drew League in LA, and I think there's like another league in LA, I can't remember what it's called. But there's Pro-Ams all over the country, but those are the more popular ones that people see because we cover them quite a bit too.
Correct. Go ahead.
Nice.
Yeah, no. Matt, just talk about, like, we were talking about just the And1 mixtapes. Just talk about like your experience when you first got to see them, and then like what was your just overall thoughts when you first saw the And1 mixtapes?
Well, I didn't see a full mixtape. A friend of mine, I don't know if you guys are like familiar with like the peer-to-peer downloading sites like LimeWire.
Yes. I am, Matt. I love LimeWire.
So that was like before YouTube. So a friend of mine told me about like a mixtape that he got with some shoes. And growing up where I grew up, which is about like an hour and some north of San Francisco, we get everything like way after everybody else. Like even when games would come out, we would get them like a week or two after everybody else would get them. But heard about the mixtape, and I went on to Kazaa at the time and was like looking for it. And you couldn't get like the whole mixtape. You can only get bits and pieces
of it.
And like the sections I would get were like 3-4 minutes long. And they heavily featured like this guy named Hot Sauce. And some of the moves and stuff he were doing, obviously they were like illegal. You can't do it in like a regular game. But you're just like, man, that's like looking back on it, that's very disruptive. Like you can't do that in a game, but he did it. And the style and flair that he had with it, like even just the way he put it through somebody's legs, or when he did like the fake pass, the boomerang, they called it, or the way he would pick up the ball off the ground and like kind of cup it and dribble it up. Like all that stuff was cool. And I was doing that stuff when I was a kid. Like I went and practiced it and tried to learn how to do it quite a bit. So that was like what really caught my eye more than anything else, is those bits and pieces of volume 3 and 4.
So Matt I'm sorry, Yanni, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just going to say, so is that kind of what jump-started your interest or kind of piqued your interest in the mixtape? Just, kind of getting those from your friend. And did you become a fan and a follower like shortly after that, or?
Oh, yeah.
How'd it go?
I already loved basketball. I mean, growing up in the 90s, I mean, I know every era will probably say it, but I feel like I grew up in like a really good period of actual basketball.
Yeah.
And I love the style of basketball. I just love the style of basketball then. So I already had this love for hoop. And then when this stuff came out, it was like, it was more, I guess I could do it versus I can't play in the NBA, but the street ball type stuff, like I could identify with it and do it. These are like, some of them were just normal guys that were out there, weekend warriors type style.
Sure.
The rise in the And1's, like, especially in the apparel market, did that teach you anything like about like just doing a startup basketball company? That teach you anything?
Oh yeah. I think the biggest thing it taught me, and I always like pay respect and homage to people that came before me, is the biggest thing that I taught myself and a couple of my friends is like the amateurism of it. Like growing up, you always thought like somebody needed one of these to film things, like with TV. They just had a handheld camera like that they were using, and they made this video. And that was what like more intrigued myself and my friends to be able to go out and shoot our own content. And we would always hear stories about, guys when they were in high school, or the Hook Mitchells, and I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but he was the dunker that played with Kevin Garnett in the Chicago area, Ronnie Fields. Yeah, so you would hear stories about all these guys all the time. And for me growing up, like I wanted to tell those stories with video. I didn't want them to just be like these mythological, oh, you did a windmill on somebody for the game winner, and it was an And1, and like, no, I wanted to go out there and like capture those moments. I don't want them just to be stories.
Nice. So you would say basically the street ball kind of culture just influenced you I know you were filming like high school stars like DeMar DeRozan and stuff like that, and I guess that's kind of just sparked your influence, just seeing other people doing it and watching the mixtapes.
Yeah, just because it was like something I could do. Like I can go pick up a camera and shoot that. Yeah. I can go and create like a mixtape. Like I can go and do that. Like if I put my time and energy into it. Did I think it was going to become what it is today? Like, no, I don't think anybody who has something blossom that big really can fathom something being that what it is. Like I'm like 17 years later. Yeah. But it definitely had a huge impact on starting it up and wanting to do more in the basketball space.
I like that.
Matt, talk a little bit about, let's go backtrack a little bit, Rafer. Again, all four of us have a slightly different perspective. Maybe you and Chelsea are kind of the similar age, so you might have some similarities there. As I'm looking at Rafer, I'm like, yes, I'm glad this JUCO player, this guy who wasn't always eligible in high school, made it to the NBA. I'm so happy for him. And he's a street ball player, where you're more like, well, that's the guy who went on to the NBA. I like hot sauce and Professor. So, talk a little bit about that. Like, do you feel that represented as well as a fan? And did you gravitate to the players who stuck around? Or did you already see kind of the business model? Like, hey, Rafer's still kind of representing And1. He's in the NBA. What did you think of that? Him not necessarily being on the tour anymore. And then the other guys kind of even be more popular.
Well, I think there was like one line in there where Naclerio said something like he's the most famous street ball player of all time. And
the last 30 years.
I politely disagree with that. Like as a fan, and then also just, I think for you look at things under a different scope because you've been involved in the high school space for like so long. Like you look at it differently than I would. Like when I was in early 2000s, I was just a fan. I wasn't looking at it in the same respect that I would look at kids today. So for me, I liked Skip's game, but he was a guy that I couldn't really identify with because I could never be Skip. So like he made it to the NBA and that was cool. Like that was really cool for like, if you're talking about the entertainment street ball side, like at least you can show some credibility for the game of basketball coming out of this product. Right. But the guys that I personally were like a bigger fan of were guys like Hot Sauce and Professor.
Matt, I just said this. Me and you are on the same page. I just said this.
And Air Up There. Like those are the guys that like I saw and I was just like, holy. Like just some of the stuff they were doing, like Professor added, Hot Sauce did all the illegal stuff. Professor had like some legal moves with a lot of flair, but he could also play even though he was tiny. So even when they took him to some of these like different outdoor crash the court events, like he could hoop, he could like stand his ground. Whereas there was one moment in there where they said that Hot Sauce showed up to a pro-am, and by the end of the day, they were calling him ketchup. Like there was level of game being played by both of them, but both of them had like their reasoning why they were a part of the tour, why the tour got so big, was because of guys like them.
Yeah.
Speaking of Professor, how were you? How'd you feel Professor not being in that documentary?
Man, like I feel like he was one of the biggest parts of that entire existence of And1. Like, obviously, the first mixtape is like you never want to discount that, right? So that like helped you get onto the scene. But what helped you go to like the next step and the next step and the next step? So like, if you look at, I was telling Ronnie about this on last night. If you look at the views on each mixtape on YouTube, it's like Volume 1 has like 200,000 views. Volume 3, when Hot Sauce was first introduced, has 2.2 million views. So there's a huge difference. And Volume 2 has like 50,000 views. So it may have been hot at the time, but what do people remember today, like 20 years later, like 25 years later? So for me, I think that like Professor 100% should have been in there, and he should have been like a huge part of it. I think if you're interviewing guys like Fat Joe and CC Sabathia, you can definitely interview. Like, what did CC Sabathia have to do with anything in the mixtape?
I agree.
Nothing whatsoever, right? Like he's a pitcher that played a long time in Major League Baseball. He's very accomplished in that space, but he has nothing to do with the And1 mixtape tour. And I know this because I was like a a diehard fan. Like, I have no clue why you would interview that guy.
Yeah, he was the most random one that got interviewed. I was like, that really sees Sabathia and the And1 mixtape documentary.
Well, it's interesting you guys mentioned that. The guy that was random for me was Exhibit. It's like
Well, he was a part of the music, though. So he was a part of the music in like one or two of the video games, like the Streetball games.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
That's why they were interviewing some of like the music artists, which I understand a bit. But man, you can't leave out some of the big key players. You didn't even talk about Alimo. Like, are you kidding me? Like, he was huge for the tour.
I think Matt too. Just to kind of piggyback on what you said, like, and let's be honest, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, Professor was relatable too. He brought a diversity aspect, and he was white.
Yep.
Like, so you have this culture where it's a lot of guys from New York, whatever, grew up in the hood. Black guys have these stories, and then you have the Professor who's doing everything that they're doing. He brought a different aspect, a different flair, and I think it just made it more relatable to kids and people that are watching. And I don't recall another white player being on the tour. I could be wrong, but he's 100% the most recognizable. Regardless of race. So I think that was something that kind of elevated the brand, at least at the time as well. Just kind of having him be there. So that was my opinion.
And he's hands down the most popular player of that whole entire product ever. It doesn't matter if you want to go down the road of like who's the best player. Like, Skip is the best player. But when you're talking about popularity and what came out of everything, like, he's been involved with Streetball for the last 20 years of his life, and he's still at it, and he's like still like extremely popular. Like, how do you not reach out to this guy? And I saw like one of his tweets where he said somebody reached out to him from the studio, and they asked if he was from New York, and he's just like, "What the hell? Like, you guys even know what you're talking about?" He even reached out to us and asked me if I had any footage of Skip when he was like back in high school, and I'm like, "What?" Like, I was like a kid, like all life hadn't even started yet. Like, what are you doing any research on this project?
That was pretty tough because they, like I mentioned to you guys internally, and I'll just share it on the pod, no problem. Like, people reached out to me and they were like, it's just a total random fishing exhibition. It's like you're nothing specific. Like, well, what exactly are you looking for? And like Ani said earlier before you came on, Matt, it seemed kind of rushed. The ending seemed rushed. They didn't really tell what the guys are doing now, or like what did they go on to do. There obviously was more tour. Matt, talk about that just for a real quick second. They ended, and then like Ball Up was still going. Obviously, there was still street ball, so it's not like
after And1, the players like left. I mean, from a fan's perspective and kind of like paying attention to like what the internet was saying and everything, I think the players split off because like one player, we won't name that player even though we know who it is, but was making quite a bit of money, but he wasn't the basketball player, but he was the flair of the tour. So they all broke off except for him to go and create their own thing with Ball for Real. So Ball for Real happened. It didn't do that well. I went to like a couple of their stops in San Diego and LA when I moved down here. So that was like 06, 07. I think that tour lasted 1 year. Then it went away. And then Ball Up happened, I want to say like 10 years ago. And that added like a whole new like entertainment style flair to it. Like the whole setup to everything was not Streetball, to say it lightly. Like even And1 towards the end, they went away from playing outdoors, and that was like the whole thing. Like even when they were talking in there was a moment in there where they were talking about like standing room only. Like imagine if the NBA had standing room only like Streetball does. Like if you're going to the Dykeman. And that's like the cool part about it. Like it's not normal. Like it's when you look at the pictures of the Dykeman, everybody's standing around this circle and the court is an oval instead of a rectangle. Like that's like the cool part about Streetball. It's disruptive. It's different. It's not the same product as what you see in high school, college, and the NBA. Those are the cool things about it. And I just think like you could have told more of that and shed more light on those types of things, much more. And I think there could have been a multi-part series with this. I think they rushed a lot of things through way too quickly.
Yeah,
I agree on that.
The rushing definitely happened in this stuff, but obviously they try to do the best because like it seemed like the whole thing got was rushed, like making the skip tape and putting it out there. And they kind of alluded to that. So I thought they did a good job about that.
Why even make it?
Are there any 30 for 30 docs that exceed an hour though? Maybe they're trying to just stick to their structure of the,
a couple.
They should have done a 2 or 3 part. They have multiple part series on them. They should have done that with this.
That was such a big moment, like in basketball, like history in the last 20, 30 years. Like it deserved more than an hour, in my opinion.
Gotcha. And because of it was an hour, Matt, the doc made it seem like And1 created a lot of firsts in basketball. Which one do you think that was most egregious? That like the claim that they made that just me, you, and others know it's not true. There's other people hitting me up are like, why did they say that?
I think one part that you and I texted about was like the whole mixtape thing. Like people have been making mixtapes for a long time before that. And if you want to talk about the music side, that's like a whole nother piece. But even with video mixtapes, people have been making them for a while. Like you even said, freaking DJ Ron Loke over here making his own mixtapes with his 2 VCRs. Like you did it too. Like they've been made for a really long time. Before that, I think you can say they heavily popularized it with a disruptive type of basketball. There's one thing if you're doing organized basketball, and there's another with like this game. This game is so much different. It has a lot more entertainment value to it. But I think there was another part on there where, so for us, like we've been making mixtapes for like 20 years. There was one part on there where they were talking about how they threw music and edited to like the footage, and like, no, you didn't edit anything to any footage. You literally just threw highlights on the timeline, and the timeline is what you would put on the editing software, and then you put the music on top of it, and you didn't edit anything. Like there was no editing going on there. So for me, I'm very passionate about doing something in a more artistic and creative way with mixtapes. So when you watch the mixtapes that we did, or you watch like Hoop Mixtape, or you watch Yeah Area's Finest, you'll see things hit the beat. And you'll see them like if it's like a really dramatic part that has like a dramatic part to the song, you'll see things slow down, and you'll see things like build up. And that's like the true art of making a mixtape, just like you would with music. Like you want to like hook somebody to really watch something. So for me on that end, like, again, I pay respect to something that was made before we existed, but I really feel like there wasn't as much thought as the guys were trying to put into it. Like, oh, we came up with this grandiose idea of doing this, and we put all this thought and effort into creating the mixtape. Like, no, you just threw music over like some really cool highlights.
Correct.
And it popped for that time.
It definitely did. Obviously, Ballislife's involved in Streetball and growing the brand, and its participants as well, like White Iverson, Frank Needy, those guys. What parallels, Matt, do you draw from And1 and to what Ballislife is doing now? What parallels do you draw? What did you learn? What do you know not to do, or what do you know what to do?
Well, I read a piece that I think Dime did like 6 or 7 years ago on the guys and like what they're up to and how it all started, and they interviewed all the guys. I think that piece is more worth of a read than some of the stuff that's going on there if you want to like really see like what they thought about everything. But it really was just a group of guys that wanted to play basketball. And as you saw, like Main Event said on there, Wally Dixon, like, hey, I just came from transferring from 3 different schools in college, and I just wanted to play basketball just because that's my outlet. Like, I want to play basketball. So if I could hoop, get free gear, get paid or whatever, like I'm going to do it. So a lot of those like initial things that they were doing on this article that I read were doing without trying to like imitate it. And I think that's more of I guess the power of the love of basketball than it is anything else. So for us, we started playing outside more, I think at the beginning of last year, and we saw that people loved the content. So me being like a huge fan of Streetball and growing up with it so much, I started trying to add different key pieces that I thought would be great for this like resurgence in playing outdoor basketball. So like the Frank Nitties, the Cesar Guerreros, the White Iversons, I think each one has their purpose in this, but the way we're trying to keep it going, which in their conclusion of the video, they said they got away from with the business side of things, is I want to keep it basketball. I want to keep it real basketball in everything we do. And I really take it to heart, being in the basketball space as long as I've been in the basketball space, that like I'm almost like a gatekeeper in like trying to help keep basketball because I care about it so much, if that makes sense. So there's like a lot of people in the streetball space that are doing it for the wrong reasons, and they're more like influencers, and much of the stuff they're doing is like on the negative side of basketball, and I don't care for that. So when I saw that stuff going on early on last year, that was when I was like, I'm going to bring real basketball outside. I'm going to do what I can to bring the Frank Nitties and the Caesars and the Allens and even the guys on the East Coast squad with Duke and Austin and Zach and all those guys. I want to bring real basketball so that people don't think that these influencers are real basketball players, because they're simply not. Like I want to protect basketball in that way.
I really like that, Matt. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I just really like what you said about just keeping it basketball. You know, you just see, so many people have a platform now, or just access to social media where they can just kind of put out any type of content and, people will run with it. So I just really like what you said, and just kind of curious, what do you feel like is next? Like, what's next for Streetball? What's the next biggest thing that you'd like the story to be told, or what, what's kind of the direction that you see, Streetball heading at this point?
I think there's a lot of synergies with Streetball and what we're doing, and the cast that we have of guys that if you're a fan of shows on Netflix like Last Chance U, or even the Cheer show that they did, what that shows again is like the same thing I saw when I was young, is something that is focusing on talent that's there, but it doesn't have to be the top tier talent. So with Last Chance U, you're focusing on junior college basketball and junior college football. You're not at Alabama. You're not at Oklahoma State or Oklahoma. You're not at USC. Like you're at some random place in the middle of the country somewhere, or you're up north at in what is that? What's that school that they did the last one on?
Oh, there's East LA, and then there's maybe Hartnell College. Was it?
No, they did. For some reason, I can't remember the name of the school over there in Oakland that they did it on.
Laney College.
Yeah, they did it at Laney. So they did it at Laney as well. And then with Cheer, they're in like a random area in Texas, focusing on
Trinity Valley.
Really good cheer squad. Like that's amazing. Like that's so cool to me to see those types of stories being told on these individuals who are also putting a lot of time and effort into their craft.
Yeah.
So for me, I see so many synergies in the rawness and the naturalness of like the love of sport that we have here with Streetball. Like these guys love to play basketball, and the people that are coming out, like it's kind of some of the stories they have with people pounding on the bleachers, or some dudes back there just drinking like a 40. Like there's just a bunch of random things going on at the park that wouldn't go on at like a regular NBA game or a regular high school college game. So I just think there's a lot there that is like untapped potential, but it needs to be done the right way. Like, and the right way goes back to what I was just referring to with the right people being in certain positions and having that platform. So when we go into these neighborhoods, we need to respect the neighborhoods that we're at too. So that's why we want to keep it basketball. Like I understand if we do certain things, the videos can do better and you'll get more views.
Sure.
But can I hold my head up afterwards if I do something just to get views on a video? No, I can't, because like Ronnie, I've been a part of this basketball space here in Southern California, him longer than me, but for like the last 17 years. So if I do something wrong, or I allow something to go wrong in one of these neighborhoods, like why would I sacrifice that for the last 17 years of me being welcomed into all these neighborhoods?
I was talking to Brad, who works at Ballislife, and we talked about, because you brought back like the showing like the outdoor courts, and I think he did some stuff out in Arlington. And I was talking, like, yeah, this is like this is basketball. You got guys on the sideline drinking, smoking while you're hooping. I mean, that's how it was like when I played. Like, I love hooping outdoors. Like, it was, we had the rec center, but just hooping outdoors was such a different feel. And like when I was watching those videos, I was like, yo, like this took me back. Just hooping outdoors and just just playing.
a lot of it's evening the playing field with certain people too, because you play indoors, you can do hard cuts, you can
Right.
stop on a dime. Like there's outdoor, you can't do that. Like, no, we're all the same speed now.
And you may be hooping on double rims, you know.
Yep.
The elements bring out a lot in players, and some rise to the occasion and some don't. And Naclerio was kind of mentioning that. I think the documentary mentioned that as well. Like there's a certain element of the street ball game. So Matt, they kind of mentioned in the documentary. Do you just think the demise was them getting away from the pure basketball and it kind of became gimmicky, or do you think the business aspect, something was eventually gonna not work out? We're trying to keep 10 guys happy, 15 guys happy. What did you learn then, and what do you know now?
I think everything good at some point comes to an end.
Sure.
And unfortunately, that had to happen with that. I think they heavily did get away from basketball, and if basketball people aren't in control of something, that's going to happen. Like the marketing people come in, or the business side people come in, and they want to do as much as they can. I believe at one point And1 was number 2 in basketball, only behind Nike, and that includes Jordan with Nike. So they were ahead of Adidas, and they were doing like over 300 million in sales a year. So when you have that, like what can you do? You're kind of stuck in that position. Like there's nothing you can do. They're going to take over and do whatever they want to do. But then at the same time, there was that, the players wanting to be involved and taken care of a bit more. But when you're a basketball player and an athlete too, you also have to understand like your career has a lifeline too. So if you want to extend your career beyond playing, you have to do what you can also on the side, figure out how you can still be involved later down the line. And that's something that I try to talk to and discuss with the guys that I'm working with as well, because I don't know if this is still going to be popping a year from now. I have no idea. I don't control those things. So for them, it was more of like, you're getting older. Like when 8 years of the tour go by, Shane was already in his mid-30s by the time the tour started. So when you get older, you got to find different ways of being involved with the tour. And I know a lot of that happened late, which is why all that whole group left and tried to create ball for real. So when the whole team leaves, you're screwed. Like you lost your whole product.
Yeah.
So it's tough. It's tough to see as a fan at the time, but also I saw things going down when I would show up to open runs. I didn't really like going to the games indoors. I liked the open runs. I would show up literally just for the open runs and watch those, and sometimes play in them. But playing in the NBA arena, that's not street ball.
Right.
Yeah.
Setting up games so that you win every game, that's not street ball. When we play against people, I don't care if we lose. If you lose, you earned it, right? That's basketball. It's life. You're not going to win every single game.
Gotcha. Well, Matt, we appreciate your input and your honesty, and thank you for your time. And we'll talk to you again soon, hopefully about some topic that's good news and that benefits us all.
Of course. And nice meeting you both again.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate you.
Bye.
Take care. What are you guys' reaction to what he said? He obviously has input. He's very, he wants to keep it. He don't want to go crazy in on the doc, but he did. But I mean, some of the other things he mentioned just about the business.
I mean, I think he's totally right. When you have people that are in certain spaces like Matt, he knows what he knows. So you putting something out there, maybe that will fool the average person, maybe that it would be a good documentary to me because I don't have the background and know all the information that Matt knows. But I think when you do know so much and certain people that were affected and not included and story wasn't told, then, it's not going to be good to you. So, Matt was very, politically correct in what he was saying, but, it sounded like he was disappointed. And rightfully so, when you have somebody who's in that space, who's dedicated, 17 years, whatever, however long he's been doing Ballislife, just a platform that, highlights players in the street ball culture, to see a documentary that didn't really, touch on everything that it needed to touch on, that he was underwhelmed, like Ani, basically.
Yeah, no, I was in complete agreement with him because I thought this documentary could I don't want to say bring back Streetball, but like if done right, just kind of brought back that love, for the purity of it, like that outdoor playing and all that. And I just felt like it was a little rushed. Like you said, how much And1 and just Streetball impacted our, all our lives when we were growing up. You know what I mean? Just for something like that. Like you said, casual fan, it could be cool, but like for people like us that, we remember when we first watched our first, And1 this video or anything like that. Like I just thought it was just underwhelming. But but he talks about one thing I did love what he said is he could do stuff for views, but at the end of the day, can he hold his head up high on that? So he's always about just the purity of basketball. And I think ultimately that's just what all this is about, none of the gimmicky or novelty type stuff, just basketball at the end of the day.
Yeah. Wanted to ask you guys, put you on the spot a little bit. You guys have obviously watched videos. Again, you watch Balls Live, Hoop Mixtape, Overtime, all the rest. Do you guys do you think there's one in the era of high school players getting filmed like that is like the greatest mixtape of all time? Do you have a top three? I guess what's your top 2 or 3?
For me, just my personal, Trey Jefferson, who went to play at Texas Southern, about 6'8", about 5'8", 5'9". Played 2 years. I loved when I saw his mixtape. I loved it. And then he played at Texas Southern, so I went and watched him play one game. He was hooping over there. I think the first year averaged like 23 points per game. Akil Carr, the Crime Stopper. Like he was just fantastic. Every time his mixtape, like you get the notification that his mixtape is up, automatic click. Like I loved Akil Carr. So it was like Akil, Trey, and now the third for me is it's between Aaron Gordon. I think his sophomore mixtape. It was a sophomore year. I think Yay Area's Finest put that out, and then Marcus Levette Jr., who went and played at St. John's.
Ooh,
How about you, Chelsea?
I think for me, 2 of my favorites, probably John Wall. He had a great mixtape. I don't know if Hoop Mixtape put that out. I don't know, but his was excellent. Brandon Jennings. Wow. I thought he was like the best player ever after I watched his. Between just the passing and the shot making and the craftiness and stuff like that, definitely one of my favorites. A guy that's my class, or a little, I think he's maybe a year behind me, Quincy Miller. He had a really good
went to
Baylor. He was like, you thought he was freaking, and Quincy's actually a friend of mine, but he looked like he was like number 1, 2 pick after his mixtape. Like it was incredible. Just the size and shooting ability, I really enjoyed, I have people that are mostly around my age, but I remember Akil Cars and some of the guys that Andi mentioned. But I think for sure for me, it's just going to be a tie between John Wall and Brandon Jennings for sure.
Yeah, we definitely saw that come of age, and you can go to ballslife.com. We did a top 30. You just Google top 30 mixtape, ballslife.com. I think most people in the industry and the people that film do think the John Wall tape by Hoop Mixtape is the best of all time. It kind of blew up the industry in a way, I guess. Well, the And1 tour was kind of, people were moving on from that, where they were looking for the new thing in basketball. So that came, and obviously outdoor ball's been going on. It's going to continue to go on. The end of the doc made it sound like, well, what's going to hit next in the culture? And it's like, well, it's continuous. It's always going on. You can always play ball. You don't have to have this ball and the lightning with Rafer. I don't know if that's ever going to happen again. It doesn't seem like. Maybe there will be something. Maybe there'll be a kid that just blows everybody's mind. I don't know, but I think we're going to be here to see it happen. I wanted to give some reference to what we talked about as well. And then, Anya, I have a question for you about the circuit, but wanted to let you guys know the mixtape culture we also talked about in episode 38. So you can listen to the audio for that. That top 30 mixtapes players ever. We broke that down on episode 72. Our guy, Ron Naclerio, talked about Sweet Pea, who, a lot of things I could talk about him, but that's for another day. But, he was trying to go to UNLV. He dropped out of high school, and he never got to play for UNLV. And that kind of was one of the negatives and one kind of the beginning of the end for Coach Jerry Tarkanian at UNLV was Sweet Pea's whole ordeal and him not being able to really, be an academic student. So he got in trouble. There's a documentary called The Legend of Sweet Pea, came out in 2015. it's really good, really eye-opening. If you want to know more about Skip and kind of what he went through in his time in California, there's a really good documentary. It's really raw and uncut. It was on Fox at the time at Between the Madness. I believe it's on YouTube, Between the Madness, 1990. Did you watch that, Ani? What's your quick take on it?
You knew what this video, you knew what the film was going to be about, like within the first 5 minutes. When it talks about the guys like Terry Robertson and Rafer Alston being suspended, like before they could even scrimmage because of a drug test, a failing drug test. Rafer, he had a domestic issue, but it was about like every 3 minutes, like failed drug test. They interview the guy. I don't really have a problem. or I smoke. Yeah, well, I think I forgot who said it. He said, I smoke. The coaches probably smoke. So like, what's it a big deal? I'm like,
yeah, they were going through a lot then at that time, and obviously Jerry Tarkanian, again, we talk about him a lot on these things. He was the coach, and after he would coach in the NBA, and many people think he did coach in the NBA to give Sweet Pea Daniels a chance to play in the NBA, which he did, which is amazing in itself, all that he'd been through, and he'd been shot and survived it, and he played in the NBA, and that's a really telling thing. But yeah, those guys, I asked Rafer many years later at the Fab 48 about his time at Fresno State, and he was very candid. Again, he's very candid, kind of like he is kind of with the And1 tour guys, and I think he had some kind of riff there when he came out in either like a slam interview, and he said, those guys have to put in the work, and I made it through the junior college ranks. I made it through D1 and got drafted. I went through a training camp. Like, these guys think they're gonna play or be good in And1 tour, and they're gonna make it. Like, it ain't gonna happen. And a lot of guys took exception to that. I think some of the guys like that were in that video and in that movie took exception. Like, why did he put us down? Like, we're trying to make it like him. I think Coach Naclerio kind of touched on it a little bit, that he was the guy up there on that level. And he was candid about his Fresno State time when I talked to him. And he said, hey, those guys were not focused. They were not focused. They were jerking around. Like you said, they got suspended. He got suspended. I got failed drug test, failed weed test, failed drug test. He never put it together. Right. Tremaine Folks, who played on that team, he's a friend of mine. He kind of mentioned, he goes, hey, I was hanging out with the homies. I got drafted, and I had to stop doing that. I had to stop doing that. And he played with the Clippers and for Detroit for a little while. So if I was going to make it, I had to cut that stuff out. So
to get away.
It's a matter of maturing. And I think Rafer just had the talent. Rafer has his, obviously an older guy now, but he still drives Naclerio nuts, and Naclerio drives him nuts. So we appreciate those Naclerio coming on and telling us some of that candid moment. So yeah, check out those things for more information. We want to move on. I wanted to mention the things we mentioned in episode 131. Our guy Ian Jackson, I want to give a shout at him. I didn't know the information correctly. Ian, there were 17U tryouts, and he's involved in those June 18th through 25th in Colorado Springs. And then if he makes the team, he's going to play in the FIBA 17U World Cup in Spain. So Chelsea, you put me on the spot. I do think he will make that team. I thought he was part of there was the 18 and under team that he was going to.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought.
In that he was going to be playing down. So I think he will make that 17 and under team. He was obviously very good on the 16 and under team. Now, the 18 and under team already had their tryouts, as you know, in Straight Jesuit in Houston.
Yeah, I was there for that.
Yeah. Oh, so did you go to that? So the team has already been announced, and they're going to play in the FIBA America 18U Championships, and that's the one in Mexico and TJ. So I got
okay.
So yeah, our guy Ian is not part of that. Ani, why don't you tell us about the roster and then what you saw?
Yeah, let me pull up the roster real quick because I think they just announced the finalists.
The roster's there. If you want me to talk about it, and then you can mention like what you saw. Did you go to a couple of various of the workouts and tryouts?
Yeah, I was there right before. It was the day before when they were announcing the 17. Right, and like guys like Derek Queen. That was my first time actually seeing Derek Queen since he lost all the weight. Like he lost 40 pounds in the past year, and he was really good. I mean, just skilled, moving better. Just showing a lot of like the shooting, the inside out play. I thought he was very impressive. I think he made the top, the top 13. Anthony Black was good. 6'7" point guard, athletic, really can make plays for others. Cam Whitmore, another kid was really good. Khalil Ware, we talked about him with the McDonald's game. I mean, just when he's locked in, he's really good. Going to Oregon, Jared McCain, who's going to Duke. I think Jared's just one of the most like consistent players. He's one of the most consistent players I kind of saw. Just you know what you're getting. G.G. Jackson, Brandon Garrison from Oklahoma. He kind of surprised me a little bit just with the consistency of play at that level. I think he's a top 50 kid, but really played hard. I saw some things with him as far as skill wise that I wasn't seeing in the last summer or really even saw it a couple months ago. But he made the finals group. I didn't think that he would have made it. But Brandon Garrison was one of those surprise like him and Derek Queen really surprised me just with how productive they were. But yeah, I thought it was, the guys competed for the most part in the drills. They're a little, they ready for the games. And, one thing to note is like these kids, they've been to so many camps. They've been to so many, so the drill part, you want them to compete more, but this is probably their 100th camp, so they know the routine. They know what really probably is going to matter as far as them making or missing it. So, but yeah, overall, I thought it was I think that was it was a Saturday, I believe. Saturday I went. Yeah. So it was the day they announced the 17.
Yeah. So they've cut it down. Let me just go over the guys who you didn't mention who made the team. Mark Armstrong from New Jersey, St. Peter's, Villanova. Kanan Carlisle, I believe he's the kid out of Georgia.
Correct.
Devon Castle, Eric Daly Jr., Cam Whitmore, and then you mentioned the rest of the guys except for Ty Rogers. So those are the guys you mentioned. Obviously, they're in different classes. Some of them are going to college. Jared McCain is 223, and our guy Derek Queen is 224, which is very interesting because Ian Jackson is with the lower group as a 224, and Derek obviously makes the cutoff and made the team. Does that surprise you as a 224 that he made the team, Ani?
Yeah, it did. But when I saw him play and I saw him shed the weight, it didn't. I knew he was skilled. I didn't realize how skilled he was because obviously at Montverde he didn't play a whole lot,
a whole lot.
But just seeing how skilled he was, like some of the stuff he like the turnarounds, the face ups, and the jabs, left and right finishes for a kid at 6'9", like. I didn't see that offensive repertoire when he was heavier, but now you get to see it. Like, he went at like the Khalil Wares and other guys that are projected to be lottery picks and first round guy for the 23 draft. But it surprised me, but when I saw him shed weight, I got to see the whole skill set.
Gotcha. And as we close out, I wanted to mention, like you said, make sure you check out all our content at ballislife.com. The reason we did episode 131 with the player rankings is the player profiles, which we really didn't mention that much, kind of touched on it. So make sure you can check those out under the profiles tab on ballislife.com. You can go back and check out all the years. Some of the names we mentioned in this week's doc, and obviously their ranking by the Hoop Scoop or Bob Gibbons is there. Even if you talk about before the modern recruiting, 2007, 2008, when ESPN and 247 and Rivals came to be. We have those old ones archived. You can go check those out. Wanted to give people just our schedule. We did this on a Wednesday. As you listen to this, you might listen to it toward the end of the week. Obviously, we're going to recap the Pangos camp on June the 8th. The Pangos camp is going to go on the 5th through the 7th. And then we're going to take a little bit of time off as we're going to prepare for our 3rd annual draft show. That will be on June 23rd. We're going to try to recap Section 7 and some of the live Scholastic period earlier in that week, but we'll definitely be on before the NBA draft, 2022 NBA draft on 6/23, June 23rd. So we're not going to have our normal schedule. We're going to try to get back on our normal schedule, but we have a few things we have to take care of, and obviously the draft is going to impact that. Let's talk about the draft real quick, and then we'll jump off. Anything, Chelsea, that surprised you about the draft and the order? Orlando won it. They get the number 1 pick. OKC's 2, Houston 3, Sacramento's 4, and then Ani, you talk about after that some of the guys who stayed and who's decided to stay in school, and some of the guys who declared.
No real shockers to me. I got to see the lottery a little bit. I looked at Damian Lillard in Portland and just all that, get rid of everybody and we're going to build around Dame, and they didn't even get a top pick. So that was the main thing. I just looked at his face like, oh, here we go again. But, otherwise, I think the number one pick, like we kind of talked about previously, can kind of go either way. With Orlando, I honestly think it's probably going to be Paolo. But I wouldn't be surprised if they went with Jabari either. So those are my two predictions. I don't see Chet going number one at all. So I just don't really think, Orlando is probably the best fit for him. But I'm interested to see what Orlando does. Like, I really think they need, bigger positions in size because they're very guard heavy. Markelle Fultz is going to come back, and Cole Anthony and Jalen Suggs. Like, they have a lot of guards, but there's still some pieces away from being even competitive. I think, did they finish like last or like second to last? Close. So hopefully they can get a piece that can help them, because I really think you're kind of seeing a trend in the NBA with just the younger up and coming teams building around young pieces doing well. It took some time, but look at the Cavaliers. They have a lot of a young core that is kind of up and coming, and I think that's the trend. So just to make the pieces fit. So nothing really surprised me. Like I said, those are my top picks. I think it could go either way between the two of them. And I'm excited to see kind of the direction of some of these other teams. OKC has 1 million picks in the next like 3 drafts. But it's time for them to make a jump because, you got rid of your pieces and you've been young, and now we got to build around SGA and, make it work. So I'm excited to see what happens on draft day.
Yeah, we had a couple guys, make announcement that they're staying or going. I think one of the main ones was Harrison Ingram. That's going back to Stanford. Kind of saw that coming. It was interesting because when I was talking to his summer coach Von Zell and just kind of getting some intel, I mean, there was a wide range of, at one point it was late first round, early second, or maybe top 20, or late second, maybe undrafted. But I think him coming back really, gives Stanford a chance to compete in the Pac-12. I thought that was one of the major additions is back. Is him going back to school.
Sure.
Dalen Terry announced that he's going to stay in the draft, which Ronnie, you probably kind of figured he was too. I know there's been some first round talks with him, maybe some early second. But Dalen Terry, 6'6", like guard, brings a lot of energy, brings versatility in the backcourt. So him staying in the draft, that was a pretty big deal. And Leonard Miller, who from Canada, he entered his name in the draft. He said, I know the college route was like Kentucky and another school, but he decided he's just going to stay in the pro route. So that's either going to be, keeping his name in the draft. G League is what I'm hearing that he's probably going to do. So, you got Leonard Miller. That was kind of a big deal because it was like, if he stays in the draft, does he have a first round promise? Because in the 2023 draft, they list him as a potential lottery pick. So, that was one of the main, like, what is he going to do? Is he going to stay in the draft, go G League, go to college, maybe go to Kentucky? That was one of those things. But him, Harrison Ingram, Dalen Terry, I would say were one of the bigger, announcements, for who's staying and going. And impacts, just college basketball. I mean, Mike Miles announced earlier that he was coming back, but, like, that was a situation where I think when he announced he was declaring, that I didn't think TCU was recruiting like he wasn't coming back. So him coming back, I think there was a list of top 45 college programs, like a preseason. They had TCU 10, and a big part was him, Mike Miles coming back. So a couple guys making their announcement really impacts just the college basketball landscape, and also impacts, just, positive, negatively as some teams, and just like them announcing that they're staying, now you ask the question, like, is there a promise that was made, and where was that promise at what range?
Gotcha. Yeah, we're gonna break that down more in the next few pods. Like I said, make sure to stick with us for the next pod. It would be on June the 8th, and then our show will be on June 23rd. Once again, we want to thank Matt Rodriguez. We want to thank Coach Ron Naclerio as we get out of here. Wanted to also throw a shout out to the guys on the And1 before that didn't really get mentioned in that doc, which would be Spider, which would be Escalade, who's now passed, Flash, who's now passed, obviously Sick With It, and the Professor. So shout out to those guys, and anybody I missed, I didn't do it on purpose. So we appreciate you guys listening. But for now, me and Ani and Chelsea are going to get out of here, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Bye, guys.